Imagine this, a city at the edge of the known world, where mathematicians walked side by side with poets, where scrolls outnumbered soldiers, where, if it had survived, humanity might have colonized Mars centuries ago. This isn't fantasy. This was Alexandria. And what burned there wasn't just a building, it was memory, possibility, the very blueprint of who we might have become. Because the Library of Alexandria wasn't just a place, it was a turning point. And when it burned, we didn't just lose books, we lost our alternate future, the birth of a dream. To understand what we lost, we need to understand what was built. Around 300 BCE, Egypt's ruler Ptolemy I, a general of Alexander the Great, had a vision, not to conquer new lands, but to conquer knowledge itself. He founded a city that would become a lighthouse of the mind, and at its center, he ordered the creation of a library unlike anything the world had ever seen. The Library of Alexandria. Its mission was simple: collect every piece of human knowledge ever written, every scroll, every language, every truth, by land, by sea, by war, by trade. If a text existed, they wanted it. Ships entering Alexandria's harbor were searched, and if any scrolls were found, they were copied, with the original kept in the library. This wasn't theft, this was preservation. And while empires rose and fell outside its walls, the minds inside were building something far greater. What was inside? Let's be clear, we'll never know the full list. But based on historical records, here's what the library likely held: the complete works of Aristotle, not just fragments. Lost plays by Sophocles, Euripides, and others, hundreds of them. Treatises on medicine, astronomy, mathematics from Babylon, India, and Persia. Egyptian scrolls written in hieroglyphic, Demotic, and Greek, now gone. A multi-volume history of the world, compiled from dozens of cultures. Possible texts from Africa, China, even early Mesoamerica, through trade and explorer reports. Scientific tools, astronomical charts, and philosophical theories that we reinvented centuries later. This wasn't just a Greek library, it was the global memory drive of the ancient world. And then, it vanished. The first fire. Here's where the myths begin. In 48 BCE, Julius Caesar was fighting for his life in the streets of Alexandria. His ships, cornered in the harbor, were set ablaze. The flames spread. They leapt from docks to storage buildings, and some say, to the library itself. Caesar later wrote that accidental fire damaged parts of the city's cultural repositories, but did it destroy the main library? Or just its annex? Even ancient historians didn't agree. What we do know is this: that wasn't the last fire. It was just the beginning. The philosopher's home. The library wasn't just a warehouse. It was a university. It included research labs, botanical gardens, classrooms, astronomy towers, and living quarters for hundreds of scholars. These thinkers, called the Mausion, were paid by the state to do one thing: think. They didn't just copy texts, they built on them. They debated the movement of planets centuries before Galileo. They mapped human anatomy 1,000 years before modern surgery. They understood that the Earth was round and even calculated its circumference. This was a world of open inquiry, rare in any age, and it frightened people. Knowledge as a threat. As the Roman Empire tightened its grip on the Mediterranean, it brought with it a new kind of order, one that feared what it couldn't control. Over time, Alexandria's free thinkers were replaced with political appointees, Funding dried up, books stopped arriving, and whisper by whisper, the idea of the library began to rot. By the 3rd century CE, a powerful woman named Hypatia, a mathematician, astronomer, and philosopher, became the face of Alexandria's last intellectual flame. She taught science, she rejected dogma, and she refused to bow to rising religious extremism. In 415 CE, she was dragged into the streets by a Christian mob, stripped, murdered, her body torn apart in public. They burned what remained of her work, and what some historians believe was the last surviving annex of the library. So what was really lost? Was it Hypatia's body, or the soul of inquiry? Was it scrolls, or entire lines of thought? We'll never fully know. But we do know this. When the Library of Alexandria burned, it wasn't just fire. It was fear. Fear of progress. Fear of free minds. Fear of a world where truth doesn't come from power, but from reason. Comment below. What do you think humanity might have achieved if the library had survived? And if this is hitting something deep, wait until you see what we've really lost. What if it survived? Let's pause, close your eyes, and imagine. What if the library had not been lost? What if, instead of darkness, we got acceleration? What if, instead of rediscovering ancient knowledge during the Renaissance, we never lost it to begin with? Historians have asked this question. Philosophers have dreamed about it, and futurists have warned what it might mean. We could be 1,000 years ahead of where we are now. The knowledge gap, because the truth is, we didn't progress in a straight line. We stumbled. We forgot. We repeated the same questions for centuries. What the library held might have given us germ theory long before the Black Death, accurate planetary models, before Galileo mathematics from Babylon and India, passed on without distortion. Engineering marvels that could have accelerated the industrial age. By 1,000 years, imagine a world where electricity was discovered in 900 CE, where democracy wasn't rediscovered, it evolved, where space travel began in the 1600s, not the 1960s. Does it sound like science fiction? Maybe, but only because we're imagining a world where we didn't forget. Did anything survive? Now comes the next mystery. If the library was destroyed, is that the end of the story, or did some of it escape the flames? Some scholars believe copies of key scrolls were smuggled out before each wave of destruction, hidden in temples, stored in private homes, taken to cities like Baghdad, Constantinople, and Cordoba. In fact, some of the knowledge from Alexandria may have reappeared centuries later under Islamic scholars in the Golden Age. Arabic mathematicians and doctors in the 9th and 10th centuries wrote about things uncannily similar to what was once rumored to exist in Alexandria. Optics algebra, surgical instruments, star charts. But was this just rediscovery, or a rescue mission that history forgot to credit? We'll never know. Because once again, those cities burned too. The pattern of erasure. What happened in Alexandria didn't end there. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad, burned by Mongols in 1258. The Maya codices, nearly all destroyed by Spanish missionaries. The Nalanda University in India, burned by invaders, wiping out centuries of Buddhist texts. The destruction of knowledge is not a one-time tragedy. It is a pattern, a cycle, a deliberate weapon used by those in power to erase what threatens them. Ideas are dangerous because they outlive kings, and once written, they can't be buried unless they're burned. The fragility of memory. Scrolls are fragile, but memory is even more so. If every smartphone vanished today, how much knowledge would survive next year, next century? We trust that everything is online, But Alexandria should remind us knowledge only survives if we protect it, not just with backups, but with culture, with value, with courage. Because what burned in Alexandria wasn't just data, it was a mindset. The future that could have been. Let's imagine again. In an alternate timeline where the library survived, global literacy may have arrived centuries earlier. Colonialism might have been weakened by philosophical literacy, not imperial force. Science and spirituality could have evolved together, not as enemies. Climate change? Possibly predicted in the 1500s. Wars? Fewer, because access to truth decentralizes power. It sounds idealistic, but it's not about being perfect. It's about imagining what happens when knowledge flows freely and realizing we never got that chance. The Library of Alexandria didn't just disappear, it was dismantled, scroll by scroll, mind by mind, until only the myth remained. But myths matter because they ask us to remember what we're capable of and what we've already lost. We're still rebuilding the memory that once lived in Alexandria, through science, through stories, through people like you who still ask questions. So the next time someone says knowledge is safe, or that truth always survives, remind them of the fire. Comment below. What do you think was lost in Alexandria? Subscribe to HistoryMind. Because history doesn't repeat, it forgets.